as far as finding the big deer, it's all about a track. And you got to cut it somewhere.
Yeah.
And you're not going to cut it if you're not out there.
You can only hunt big deer where big deer live.
Yeah.
You can't just make it up and say, well, there's a big deer on that hill. Well, maybe not, but till you find that track, put it together, what he's doing, yeah.
And then figure out the circuit.
The circuit.
Because
they do orbits. You
Yeah.
know, all these deer do orbits, and they meet up and they're going to fight. He's the guy that introduced me to hunting, my father. So he took us, me and my brother, gave us a shotgun and buckshots and said, go. And we went out in the woods, just whatever was browning us down, it was that, you know.
that's the way it was back then.
Yeah.
Did you saw a deer?
Shoot.
Because there weren't any deer. And
Not as many.
and basically, Walker County, there might have been some in the area going up towards the northern, towards Winston County, up towards Double Springs, and then going on down to Carbon Hill towards Wolf Creek. But there weren't any deer. We didn't deer hunt.
We saw a deer track, we were like,
That's what
it's like a dinosaur track, you know.
That's what Dan Moultrie is talking about. We bird hunted, squirrel hunted, rabbit hunted. I had free reign on the old mining camp that my mom was raised in, and there were no deer and there were no turkey. You didn't see tracks. They were not there. So we never pursued anything like that. It was probably about 3,000 acres, and we were just all over it. But I mean, it was literally squirrel, quail, dove,
And ditch pickles.
ditch pickles was, but we would catch our bait in that creek. Remember catching bait? We would take a brim hook and bend it down real small and go into the branch, which the branch was coming out of the old mining entrance. And they called it the black branch. You could go down and get in it, and like the sediment in it was black. It was coal. It was coal sediment. But getting those little deep pockets, and we'd take a little bent brim hook with a little piece of worm on it, and we would catch our bait and put it in a bucket, and we'd have like creek chubs and shiners and suckers, and put them in a bucket and go down to the pond. There was 2 strip pit ponds below there. Hook them up and drop them in there, and bass, and they eat that stuff up. And then when we couldn't catch them, there was only 2 houses right there. My grandmother's, that was Big Mama, and then next door, if you can imagine, is Dude and Buster. Dude was the woman, and
Buster.
Dude and Buster. And Dude,
What in the Walker County?
yeah, wasn't the one. All right, well, Dude was the woman, and she had the wash tank out of a washing machine. You know, it's got the hole. She had it sitting in the branch over below the culvert pipe. There was a big culvert pipe to get across the branch to go into their houses. She had that wash tub, the wash
Bin
guts of a washing machine sitting in, and she would just keep all of her bait in there, and if we couldn't catch them, we'd be like, we start robbing her bait and go fish. Oh, it's so fun, man.
What year was that? You remember?
That was, man, that was 74, 75.
Yeah.
Good old Walker County, baby. Hey, that's where all my people are from too.
I know,
Barney,
and
Cordova.
I didn't know that till
Oakland.
later. You talking about Barney? My one of mom. I can't remember. It was one of her uncles that was one of the foremans down at Barney Mine.
Wow.
It was all mining camp back then. You know, we had Bankhead, Calumet, and then Barney, but they all run along that line of, it's basically the end of the foothills. That's where the coal's at. They kind of run up I-22, how it runs up through there now, Graysville, and you get on to where 22 dumps into 65. There was, it was just mining camp. Sipsey, DeBar Ladens, that's where a bunch of your folks, DeBar Ladens, and
That's like Sipsey area.
yeah.
Yeah.
Big deer up there now.
Like what you were saying earlier about there being not that many deer back then. That's
There
what
were
my
none.
grandfather.
No, there were zero.
Well, especially there too, because that's where, like I said, my grandfather, like all my people were buried in Cordova.
There was a bunch. You get a Barney. It's funny. One of my old buddies, actually, I killed my first deer with his dad and his uncles. We were in a dog club back then, and he lived close to Barney out of Cordova, and they used to always talk about that big old black buck. That black buck. It was just but it was like they were like ghosts back then. That's what when we first started hunting, you saw a deer just like, oh my God,
ghost.
Where did that come? It was a ghost that appeared, it just popped out of the ground. But it was some mystical creature that you never saw.
Yeah.
Not
And
up there.
Yeah, and when we got older, we'd go riding around at night, teenagers, doing our thing. And we would go down to Wolf Creek and just to see deer at night, we're like, wow, we saw 2 deer last night, It was one of those things, and now, well, Wolf Creek's gone.
Yeah.
I think it's all private now.
Yeah.
But now Walker County and Jasper area, probably some of the best deer hunting property.
Yeah.
Sipsey, Bolo.
Close to the like Oakman, there
Oakman,
where
yep.
Jimmy and them are at. There's some giants. There's some giants around the Oakman. I think that's key to it. The places where there weren't as many deer back in the day, and they pushed into
Because we
that
didn't hunt
area.
there.
They're not that many. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, Mark, you grew up in the same area then, right?
Jasper, yeah.
So you're from Jasper.
I'm from Jasper.
So,
Parents are from Cordova. So,
oh, okay. Small world, man.
yep, I got a grandfather buried in Cordova. So,
Okay.
he used to be a mayor back in the days. I can't remember when. Long time ago.
So you're saying you grew up just small game. So it's similar to Scott.
Yeah, it's like,
Well, no, his dad hunted more than my dad. Bow hunted back in the day in the '60s.
yeah.
Out at like Wolf Creek. Well, you're hunting with a recurve in the '60s at Wolf Creek. Good luck, man.
Yeah.
You might see a deer. But his dad hunted. See, I wasn't fortunate. Like, I had to be kind of invited to go. His dad, Butch, he was a hunter.
He drug us.
He was going with.
We're going no matter what. We're going down.
He'd load them up. We're going hunting.
Here's your shotgun. Go kill a deer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we'd go down south. We wouldn't hunt up in that area up there because
No, you had to
there wasn't
leave
no
the
deer.
area to go kill a deer.
Go south. He grew up hunting down in McIntosh. That's way on down toward the beach, But he'd take us like whatever club he was in, Pickens County, what was that called, Ethelsville.
Ethelsville.
Yep. And we just go out and just whatever deer come by, we're going to kill it, and we'd eat them. We'd clean them, learn how to do that. That's how I
That
cut
was
my
the
teeth.
thing, yeah. I remember going down there with Greg on the dog hunts. I remember being down there on Thanksgiving weekend, and they killed they're
Deer hunting. It was not trophy hunting.
It wasn't
deer hunting.
You weren't supposed to kill does, but they would sneak them in anyway. Well, we would go. I remember me and Greg one Thanksgiving, and they would load them in a truck. If they were killed in the morning, they'd stay in the truck till
All day.
the evening, laying in the back of the truck. And then we, being the young little punk guys, we had to gut them all and clean them all. You think on that for a minute. And sometimes there might be 12, 15.
So you
that was
learn how to clean deer.
Killed during the day. Yeah, that's when you cut your teeth on learning how to deal with cleaning a deer. And then you're holding we always used a bag. We get it around the backside of their shoulders. Get in there, and they've been gut shot, buck shot, they're shot up, and you're just, it was like spilling into that bag. It was.
I can
We
remember-
were initiated for sure.
I can remember my father cooking a ham or something. And we were just eating on it. Buckshot. Got pain in my teeth, just big old round buckshot. But
Now, when did you guys?
I wouldn't take anything for it, man. It's,
no.
When did y'all meet?
Me and Alan, his older brother, became friends when we went to middle school. When we were 13.
Let me back up real quick.
All right.
His mother and my mother were in the same
yeah.
maternity room. Alan was born, and then he was born, 4 days later?
Yeah,
But they
your
were-
mom. She was C-section.
That's how they met. Not
Yeah.
us, not Alan and Scott, but
Yeah,
that's where it kind of started. But
Alan was born on May 11th,
Year 4.
and his mom had a C-section. I was born May 14th, and my mom and his mom shared a hospital room at People's Hospital. 1965 in May, and we met and became friends when they went to a different elementary school than I did, and Al and I met at middle school. We were 13, and I come over to her house, and then I meet Mark. Well, we go on through our following years of school. I graduate high school. I go straight into the Air Force, so I'm gone for 4 years. But all the while, me and Mark become great friends. And then when I get back out of the Air Force, Alan has a serious relationship and is on the verge of getting married. So me and Mark are more...
We're tight then,
Ever since then, it's just been like, it's funny. We were out, this is one of those moments. We're out here fishing this past Sunday. Me and Mark's catching brim. He's putting him on a balloon, trying to catch a big bass and everything. And we started talking about crib, that bass. And Mark said, he's 6.5. And I was like, Mark, that buck's 5. He's going to be 5.5 this year. And we're hemming and hawing back and forth, and Alan goes, did y'all get married? But I mean, it's,
I've been married
I wouldn't
30
trade
years.
anything for our experience together, man. There's so many tales. Alan first started hunting up here. We all turkey hunted it before it was management area.
Yeah. The reason
almost said it.
The reason my brother started hunting up here, he had a baby.
Yeah,
And he wound up having 2.
So he
couldn't leave
Alan got
this
married
area.
and had a baby. So, he and I, we were like glue. And Alan is going into this married world.
Baby raising.
Once we got up here and I mean,
Feet on
I
the ground.
wish we would have been here earlier, because like you said earlier, some of the bucks that I seen that were at the taxidermist, they're literally world-class deer. A 10-point that would score 165 and just heavy horned, long beams, long tines.
They're still around too.
They're
but they're rare.
There's not as many, but
Well, so that's what I wanted to get you guys on about. Was we talked to a lot of guys who hunt mountains in particular. We talked to a lot of swamp guys, river bottom guys, but it's always been difficult to find people who are really successful hunting just pine country, rolling hill pine plantations. And I know I've told you this, Scott. Scott's been on the podcast a couple times. We had people in the comment section a couple weeks ago being like, when are y'all bringing Scott Seals back on?
yeah, I've met
I
some
said-
great guys. Hey, I've met some great guys through the podcast.
You've been at trade shows with us?
Yeah, but one of them that reached out to me this year, just like, hey man, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Would you at least come with me and look at what I'm looking at? And me and Mark, I think we both went out there
Yeah.
first, and we walk out there. And it was like, oh boy, you just keep pushing because you are on them, And he ended
Yeah.
up killing a mature buck with a rifle and a mature buck with his bow.
I think you sent me that this year, right?
Yeah.
I remember that.
But
The one that got eaten by coyotes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I remember that.
But another guy, there's been a bunch of guys from the podcast that have reached out to me, and we've just become friends. Long distance, Texas, North Carolina. Just guys that just want to talk. But hey, are you having any luck? Hey, just communicate and it's a community. It's a community. But like one of the guys I went on a dog hunt with this year. In a classic, I'm talking about meet, go eat big breakfast, get together out front. It was I was trying to think of the name of the spot. It was, Millwood. Been dog hunting since I think it was 1968. Your tradition, and it took me straight back to the first time I ever went deer hunting. You can't put a price on that. And he's now pursuing trying to get a membership, and it's hard to get in. But they have a jam up spot, and they stalk, steal, whatever, hunt out of boxes and when everything stands. And then I think it's once a month. Once a month they have a full blown real stand line dog drive, just like it's traditional as you can get, And he killed a beautiful 8-point. Mm-hmm. I shot at it.
Have you guys ever dog hunted?
No.
Traditionally,
I'd love.
Oh my God,
it's
so
crazy.
exciting,
Dude.
We were fortunate to have many hunts where we got to hear dog racing. One of these deer around here, that deer right there, I don't know if you can see it, but my father killed it. The story is I think it's Walker County.
I don't remember.
Anyway, they started out at the hunting club, let the dogs go behind the club, took off. All day this deer run. Now, I think it's the same deer because it came 6.5 hours later back that same cutover right behind there, and my father killed it with a shotgun. But he said it was the best thing, just riding around the truck, listen to this dog, chase this deer all day long. He said go over the hills, half a mile away. A little bit later, you hear it coming back.
Yeah, I didn't get a rifle. I got my first rifle in 82. I killed my first deer with a bow in 82, and I got my first rifle in 82. So it was all shotgun. I had 1100 Magnum, 3-inch Magnum 1100 with 30-inch barrel.
Oh, yeah.
You put some number one buck in there, they did not stand a chance if they were within 50 yards. They had to be running fast to get away from that, and most of them, you'd roll them up.
The Mobile Hunters Expo is coming to Dalton, Georgia, August 8th through the 10th, and this year their speaker lineup is unmatched. They've got Bobby Worthington, Dr. Bronson Strickland, Lindsey Thomas Jr., and Jacob and myself. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you've heard Bobby Worthington and Dr. Strickland on. Dr. Strickland talks a lot about the moon phase GPS data, stuff like that, buck bedding. We've done a bunch of podcasts with him. He's going to be there speaking. And of course, legendary bow hunter Bobby Worthington kind of speaks for itself. A lot of y'all heard our podcast with him last year. If you've ever wanted to ask Dr. Strickland, Bobby, or Lindsey Thomas Jr. a question, this is the place to go do it. The Mobile Hunter Expo, Dalton, Georgia, August 8th through the 10th, they're going to be there delivering a seminar, and then, of course, they're going to open it up for a Q&A at the end. So this is your chance. This is a great place to go and get education on whitetail hunting from experts in the field. There's no other place you can get this kind of speaker lineup. So we'll see you guys there. Dalton, Georgia, August 8th through the 10th, the Mobile Hunters Expo. We'll have a booth right by the seminar area. Looking forward to seeing everybody. To learn more about the speaker schedule, tickets, hotels, parking, all that stuff, go to themobilehuntersexpo.com or hit the link in the description of this show. If you want to get a head start on deer season, you can go out and you can actually scout feed trees in summer. This is something we've been talking about on the podcast quite a bit lately. Today I'm out here, I've got a pair of Vortex Viper HDs. This is a great pair of binoculars for this. And what we're doing is we're just looking up into these oak trees, looking to see if we can see the little acorn buds on the limbs. So as summer goes on, it's going to get easier and easier to see those buds as they get larger. a tip for that is when you're looking up in the tree, you want to find a limb that's daylighted. It's just nothing but daylight behind it. You're looking at an isolated limb, and you're just going to want to pick that thing apart with a good pair of binos like these that are clear. I like to use a trekking pole and actually brace the binos on the trekking pole and sit down underneath that tree and really look at it for a while. So if you want to get a head start scout and feed trees this summer, go get you a pair of Vortex binoculars. Head on over to eurooptic.com. Use the code Southern10 and it's going to get you a discount on these binoculars or any other optics that Vortex sells.
Hey guys, it's Jake. We got a quick tip for you in this podcast. One thing I've been working on over the last year is trying to figure out how to be less bulky really while saddle hunting and mobile whitetail hunting. And the biggest issue I always had was I really liked really large packs, and the problem was outside of certain points of the season, like when it got really cold, I never used the full capacity of some of those really big backpacks. And one thing I started doing is using a smaller pack that has a lot more expandable capacity, so you can still pack a lot of stuff if you need to, but it's also very streamlined. It's super easy to go in and out of the woods with, especially during early season or just when you're not packing a lot of cold weather gear. This is the Latitude Ranger 22. I used this all last season, and I could pack a surprising amount of gear in that pack, specifically a bunch of cold weather gear, both bibs, jackets, extra layers, along with a platform, or when I was hybrid hunting with a small little lock-on, having a small lock-on on here as well, along with my sticks. And this backpack works really well with that. So if you're in the market for a new backpack and you're trying to streamline what you're doing, I'd really highly recommend looking at the Ranger 22 from Latitude Outdoors. And you can check out the Ranger 22 at latitudeoutdoors.com. All right, guys, we got another in the field tip for you today. One thing we're doing right now while we're out here scouting is looking at overlooked spots and overlooked by us. One thing we always do while we're in the field is using our tracker on Onyx Hunt to be able to not only see where we've gone, but where we haven't been, and that's what we're gonna go look at. So today, we're actually gonna work up into a drainage that we haven't been to before. We've walked all around it, but we haven't been up in it. And again, it's a very important factor of using the tracker so you can see where you have been and where you haven't. A lot of times those places you haven't been is your overlooked spots. So if you want to try Onyx Hunt, you can download Onyx Hunt today and use the code Southern and save 20% on your membership.
So I want to get into how you guys kind of progress as hunters. One thing about y'all that's funny is, you know, me and Jacob have hunted some of the same places that y'all have, and y'all have got a reputation. Your little group does. Because we would talk to the biologist at the check station. They'd be like, dude, check out this deer that got killed this weekend. I'm like, who is that guy? And he's like, I can't tell you his name, but they're real secretive. They don't put it on Facebook. And we're like, who are these people?
There wasn't any Facebook.
Well, we finally got to know Scott. And we're like, we got them. We figured out who they are. And now, years later, we got you too, Mark.
Hey, it's no secret to it. Yeah. We're just good.
So, some people were born with it. That's all, folks. So, I want to get into it because y'all's friendship and y'all's hunting group is something real unique. But also, y'all are so successful. I mean, y'all killed a fire at a big deer. And we got them on the wall right here. Mark, you killed a giant last year. You killed another giant, right? They're both above you right now. We'll cut pictures and everything of them into the podcast. But I want to talk about, so we kind of went into your upbringing, about how y'all got into hunting, but I'm curious about when did it transition over where y'all got serious and y'all wanted to actually start killing big deer? I mean, did y'all know anybody back then who was targeting big bucks specifically, or was it just
I don't
deer
think
hunting?
so. I think we kind of stumbled into a lot of it, but my brother, like we was talking about, he got into hunting this area because he was having babies and his wife wouldn't let him go far. He killed a 225-pound, a 9-point, I think it was. He said, man, y'all got to come out here and start hunting. So we started coming hunting with him and learned that, hey, there's some good deer out here. And you're finding rubs that's this big. You don't find them much anymore, but they're still out there. And we started rolling with that. And, you know, like I said, sometimes some of these places we hunt, you might not see a deer for a week. And then when you saw one, if you get a shot at it, it's worth shooting.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we did kind of stumble into it. I went through a period. I was a big bow hunter, you know, and I was still coming out of that, you know. I mean, I would stack them up. There was one year I killed 7. You know, on this management area, you know, I killed 4 with a bow and 3 with a gun. And I was kind of that guy, but I learned, that's kind of where I learned about the bachelor groups, you know. if you have a smaller buck come in there on a feed tree, just wait. Just wait. Even with a bow, whatever, you learn that the more time you're sitting in a tree. And I'm a meat guy. I have to have my meat. It is kind of a necessity. I'm going to get my meat if I can, but once I saw some bachelor groups, and I was just like, oh my goodness. Literally. There's still that one buck.
I can tell you about one deer. Let me tell you this real quick.
All right.
That you saw, and you don't know the guy that I talked to.
Right.
That I didn't work directly with him, but he kind of frequented the place I worked and told me the same exact story what you told me.
I thought it had velvet hanging down. It was opening day, and there was an 8-point. It come up out of the bottom, and he walked up this ridge and came past, and I was like, no, literally basket rack. It's funny. I think my brother killed him the next year, and he was a 10-point at 2.5 years old. And then there was a
very symmetrical.
Oh, a perfect 2.5-year-old 10-point. Perfect. 12, 13 inches wide.
I think I have one of his sheds that I found.
You could not. Yeah, I found the shed off of the deer. Anyway, he come, and then there was a 6-point that come up and wrapped around at the top, and he come up at like 30 yards and fed for like 15 minutes. All right, and then behind them was a deer. I didn't have binoculars. Just so many things. I didn't have a rangefinder. I got one pin. I'm old school.
Very limited funds.
Yeah.
We all are.
But I looked at it and I was just like, it was literally like a different animal down there. There was these two bucks, and then imagine them being like
a horse.
And there's a horse standing with these other deer, and it looked like there was velvet hanging down, like he hadn't shed everything.
All out.
And still 18, 19 inches, 20 inches wide, and looked like big bull horns coming around, curl around. And he's down there, and then he kind of goes up a hill. They're probably 75 yards. He goes up and mills around, and this other 6-point comes down there, and he comes up to the tree that I'm sitting on, and he's there for like 15 minutes, and the whole time he's just eating. He's quartering to me, and he's just feeding, and that 8-point's going around. I kind of have an idea where he was going or whatever, because he just passed through. And then I'm like, it's opening day of bow season. I'm like, if this buck gives me a shot, I'm gonna shoot it.
Because the other big deer is pretty much gone in his mind.
In my mind, he's gone. He's up on the other hill, 100 yards away. And finally, he quits eating and kind of turns around and goes back down the hill. And he goes down and goes into a gap. I draw, it's about 35 yards downhill. And he goes into a little gap. And I draw back, poof, just smoke his ass. And he goes this way, and that big buck had turned and was coming right behind him and went to the left. And I'm just like, at that point, that was a learning moment. You're just like, dude. And I mean, don't get me wrong. The buck that I shot was a decent buck with a bow. He come up and curled around, almost touched at the top. But that buck was, literally, if it is what I think it is, it was one of those things that you would see pictures of, and it'd be like one of those freaky, cactus, like those cactus type bucks where they just got stuff going everywhere. Down. Yeah, 30, 40 points. I don't know.
So it wasn't velvet hanging down.
No. A guy told me at work that his friend saw the same thing paddling down a river and looked up at the bottom. He saw it. He said, I got to watch it. He wasn't hunting. He just watched it. He explained exactly the way he did. I never told him that. He never told him that. So
Man.
Yeah.
And it was
That
in the
was-
exact same area,
That was the end of that.
below that hill where he was at. So I
That
knew.
was the end of that story for that buck. But then the next year is when I stuck that big non-typical.
That's the one
I
we
told
found-
you. Yeah, he was
found blood
non-typical.
about 600 yards away.
I just knew we were going to find that deer. We found blood the next day where he'd hit a tree coming off a hill.
Killed
And
him.
he was just a super, super buck. He was typical on his left, had 5. And I mean, like, his tines were 12, 12 inches, but G2, G3's 10, 11, long beam, 5, and then on his right had 2 main beams that come out and swung around, both of them the same length, and then like 3 or 4 points coming out of like where his brow tines would be at the base. And I shot him too high.
But he learned that let him walk for a little bit.
Oh yeah, that was a big 8-point.
Don't get in a hurry. Now, I can tell you, don't get there and say, I'll get that deer later. If you get that opportunity at a deer
Yes.
where we hunt, do not waste it.
Yes.
Because I'm still waiting on that one I saw, 2 or 3 years ago?
Two
So I watched it with a crossbow.
2 years. 2 years ago.
At 125 yards, watched it 45 minutes with binoculars.
And he
I'm
was
on the
a
ground.
giant. And he should have got more aggressive. But you go through
don't
those
know.
moments and you don't always learn. He didn't learn, well, he's learned it now, but in that
late.
moment, he should have been more aggressive to try to get within range.
As-
he was already
as-
walking, he was still hunting, and got to where, he
I needed
videoed it.
30 yards.
He videoed
I got
it.
on video. Just,
He
it's
videoed
blurry, but if I would just have said, when he started thrashing them trees, I should have went. Boom.
What kind of deer are we talking about? Like, what's the story on that?
He bigger than all these.
Yeah. I think I mentioned to you, I was like,
He's probably
Mark saw
19 inches wide,
Well, it's when y'all
kinda
asked
long, that
him about
thick.
coming on before, and I was like, Mark's honed in on this big deer. He don't want to talk right now. Kind of like Nick and his bass fishing. He's like, I don't want to talk right now.
But I did. I spent a lot of time. And there's no secret to it, but you just got to be on the ground, in a tree. You got to be out there. What I'm trying to say, but I wasted that opportunity. Just like when you should let deer walk if they're little baskets. Let them come on in. Let them go. There'll be something come in there later. But that one I should have just like he's solitary. I didn't think that. I thought there's something laying around him, another group with him. I should have.
If you got that chance, there's
Take it.
times when you got to take it. Take a chance. Take a chance. You know,
I've never
close,
seen that
see
deer
if you can
again.
close the difference. If even if he is locked down, standing over a doe, and you gotta. It's funny. I think it was that same year I was climbing a tree. It was in a whole different area. I was climbing a tree, and about 50 yards away, there was a doe that must have been watching me climb up a tree, and there was a buck standing over. And when she got up, he was one of the only times I've ever heard a buck roar here. And when she got
rare.
up to leave, he's like, "Arr!" And I'm like, whoa. And then as she turned to run, he's still like, "Arr!" Where are you going? And I'm like, whoa. I've never heard that in Alabama. I heard it in Kentucky. But yeah, when there's the vocals, that's a
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Well,
Jacob heard a lot of vocalization. It's so cool to hear that too.
I want to get more into that, but first I want to get into how you go about finding the deer. But by the way, that's a good point about you got to take the opportunity you're given. And my stepdad's been getting into hunting, and last year he killed his first buck 2 years ago. But last year we were hunting a couple bucks on our club, and he had one in front of him like second or third week of gun season, and he had a misfire on the deer, and it ended up walking off. He couldn't get the deer.
His rifle?
Yeah, his rifle misfired, and I was talking to him
that
about
10?
it. No, it wasn't the 10.
Okay.
Was it
No,
Steve?
No, it wasn't Steve.
was
Steve, I forgot about
was
Steve.
the primer dented?
No, it was. Yes, it had a slight dent. It was a light primer strike. His firing pin was messed up. He racked around, clicked again, racked around, and clicked again. He's like, "It's ammo." I'm like, "No, it's your gun."
It's a gun.
He went out and bought a new rifle. But I was talking to him at the time, and I'm like, that might have been it. You know, like you don't get a lot of opportunities in this thick pine country. And like I mentioned earlier, we talked to a lot of mountain guys and swamp guys. And the advantage of hunting in a mountain setting, especially, is there's so many things that are going to hold the deer. Like there might be a lot of areas where there's not there many deer, but there's pockets that hold them. And then you've got really harsh landscape that funnels them into certain areas. So you can kind of use it to your advantage. The thing about hunting rolling hill pine country is there's food everywhere, there's cover everywhere, and there's not usually a ton of like hard landscape features that kind of force the deer to move in a certain area. So it can be harder to narrow them down. So I'm just curious on y'all's thoughts on that. How do you go about narrowing down deer in rolling hill pine country?
Start with tracks.
That's what
Tracks.
I say.
I mean,
what we do,
if there's
we go
not
find
been-
the track.
Yeah.
We find the deer.
Yeah.
And you got to do it on them, like after a rain. Find out where they're at. Like you said, there's more food than they eat. Go ahead.
And they do their, they're going to do their little circuit too. So it's just the knowledge. I mean, literally, man, we have spent so much time. And that was kind of like our time, like when Alan was out of the picture, got his family, his wife is just so obliging. My wife at the time was so obliging. We're in the woods. And I mean, we're in the
Every
woods.
weekend.
We're in the woods all through deer season. Then we're shed hunting. Then we're turkey hunting. Then on into the summer, we're out we used to cut trails through the pines into the places we want to get to.
Those thick places.
It is literally, there is, I mean, and it's just time in the woods. But then you get, but I mean, and this is basically, this is before Onyx, this is before Hunt Stand. We just know, we learn the land. We're, we're woodsmen too. That's the first thing you got to do is be a woodsman if you want to be successful.
The first thing you just said, I mean, we took a topo map because we didn't have Onyx. We'd stand on the hill going, I think we're right here. We need to go look at this. So we do process of elimination.
Yep.
1,000 acres there. We walk it. Maybe found shed. Sometimes we'd like, we're not going to hunt there. We go over here and, oh, this is pretty good. We found some rubs and, nice rubs.
There's something about those dark pines too that
Yeah.
they just kind of, there's not a lot of greenbrier. There's not a lot of honeysuckle. It's just those dark. Just the dark pines.
Those deer can stand in there and see you, and you can't see them, and you come toward them, you slip out the back door and gone.
Are you talking about the pines that are?
They'll hit a period. Probably
They're
I don't
still
know how to age
thick,
them
but
well.
it's not
probably
green.
about 10 years old.
Yeah.
It's thick, but there's nothing in there. Every once in a while there'll be some mushrooms or something pop up. But it just
most
seems
of-
like those dark pines. Now I found a lot of sheds. If you want to find sheds, you need to be in pines.
Yeah.
Because the squirrels aren't in there heavy like hardwoods and stuff. And that's, we'd spend a lot of time doing that. But yeah, man, it's just it's time in the woods. We learn, and there's still a few places where I can go. Like Shane got me out in some areas, and I'm just thinking, whoo, boy, you're on them. You're on them. And all I do was reinforce what he's doing already, and that gives him his confidence. You stay confident in what you're doing, because literally hunting and fishing and everything, confidence. If you've got it, it's going to keep your butt in the seat. It's going to keep you in the woods. But as far as finding the big deer, it's all about a track, and you got to cut it somewhere.
Yeah.
And you're not going to cut it if you're not out there.
You can only hunt big deer where big deer live.
Yeah.
You can't just make it up and say, well, there's a big deer on that hill. Well, maybe not, but till you find that track, put it together, what he's doing, yeah.
And then figure out the circuit.
The circuit.
Because
they do orbits.
Yeah.
All these deer do orbits, and they
Yeah.
meet up and they're going to fight. Like here at my house, they fight all the time. I find sheds or broken antlers out here. But they do a circuit for sure. And for as rolling hills, there's no magic to it. You just got to be out there and find them.
Yeah, it's a lot of leg work, That's what we did. That was our thing, I got into fishing after the fact, It's funny, Alan used to be big turkey hunter, never crappie fished. Now, he doesn't crappie fish, or he doesn't turkey hunt. All he does is crappie fish. I don't turkey hunt. All I do is crappie fish. So it's kind of come around. Mark just waits till I ask him to go.
Yeah. I'll go, but I'm not a big turkey hunter anymore.
Yeah, I mean, with turkeys, it's like, kind of been there, done that. I mean, I could kill the world record turkey, and I'd be like, when's it going to be ready to cook,
The only reason I don't like turkey hunting is the snake I killed right here, right below this little shelf here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Me and him were scouting one day. I got to bring this up. Had our bows, our tree stand on our back, bows in our hand. We're walking down this ridge, and big old hill, probably, 300 feet up. Walking down this ridge, hardwood, trying to find the place to hunt.
We set our we're carrying our stands as we go. We get in about half a mile. Set our stands down so we could go on and look a little further without carrying our stands.
Yeah, and then we got on down toward the end of the ridge, and it started dropping off a big hill, and it was like, let's take a break for a minute. So I sat down. Scott's going, I think he was taking your bag off or something, put his bow down, turn around, going to sit down right beside me. And all I could do was go, had this look on my face because there was a rattlesnake right beside me. He was fixing to sit on it. And it was a giant. It was almost 12 inches.
It was the one that would bite you and dump all his venom. Yeah.
But yeah, that was
yeah, and you don't want to sit down on a rattlesnake.
That's one of the reasons I don't like turkey hunting anymore. I killed too many rattlesnakes.
There used to be a lot more snakes out there now, though. Boy, the cottonmouths used to be real bad out there.
Cottonmouths are not always by water.
No.
Everybody thinks that, they're always by water. No, they're in the hills too.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, man, just leg work. Leg work is...
Yeah, I showed you my boots. I got holes in them.
That's a good point.
That's about a year-old boot.
Yeah, you showed us your boots, and literally there's holes in the bottom of them. From 1 year, that's how much leg work. And I like that because, like you said, woodsmanship, like, there's no substitute for it, no matter what podcast you listen to, what videos you watch, what books you read.
It's literally...
You got to go do it.
Yeah.
No way around it.
Yep.
To be successful.
It's like the feed trees.
Yep.
You gotta go look at all.
This is the feed tree man.
And like this year, I thought it was going to be good, and it kind of fell on its face. There was a couple of pretty good spots I found. The only bachelor group I found were eating red oats, and they petered out at the end of September. Yeah. And it was just disappointing. And then I found opening day, where I was at opening day. There was buck sign everywhere. It was a classic, but they just didn't show. They must have been coming there at night, and that's just one of those things, Sometimes you hit it right on the head, and sometimes you miss it, But you got to keep going.
But you can't be locked down to one spot. I mean,
no.
Like the food there was there, the bucks were there. Unfortunately, they eat them all up and they went on somewhere else.
Yeah.
And some people will sit there, and that's all they do. Just stay in one area. We kind of don't do that.
Rarely sit.
We go wherever the deer are.
Yeah, your rut spots you can. You can.
Yeah.
Make them kind of same old. But no, early season and all through the season, I don't want to be in the same spot. No.
A lot of people said, and I get it, hunt the does, and that's true. Only certain time, unless you're going to kill a doe. If you want to kill a buck, you're not so much hunting doe because they're not really interested in does until later, and that's when I've always heard and seen. This is what I feel anyway: is mature deer solitary. You get to an area that's got a bunch of tracks, and it's not the right time. You're going to see deer. You're going to see the wrong ones. But if you're looking for that big one, you find that one place that don't have any tracks. You got that one buck track. That's where he's at. That's my view.
That's the truth, though.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys like to wait for a rain, give it a couple hours, go out there, find your tracks. What are you looking for in a track? Like size? You look at stride?
Some size of your hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, big.
200-pounder.
Yeah, 200-pound deer.
So about as wide as your hand. Central Alabama, Pine Country, that's how big the track is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
And these deer up here got big horns now, but they don't have as big tracks. But back in the day,
yeah,
we caught 'em.
they used to weigh 225. He killed one weighed 238. Back, about that same time we were talking about it. These other, he
2000.
he weighed 238 at the check-in, and then we put on another scale, it weighed 250. But now they weigh, mature deer weigh 180, 190.
Yeah.
You know,
What changed?
they cut all the hardwoods and
Introduction of
other deer. Yeah, they brought in deer
from lower
other
counties
counties, and
to populate this area. So
yeah.
So what was so you guys hunted, again, we're talking about some public land, Central Alabama. All the internet people will probably be able to find it, but we're not going to name it. But back, a lot of WMAs, or I mean, just a lot of land in the Southeast is like this, where a lot of it used to be upland hardwoods, white oaks, red oaks, hickories, and it got clear cut, and now it's primarily loblolly pines, pine plantations.
yeah,
And you guys hunted through that transition. So it went from upland hardwoods to pines. How did you guys adjust with that?
I
just kept hunting.
being, I'm the feed tree guy anyway. So, that's when I go, that's when I start. It's like I had X number of really productive spots, in the day.
Yeah, you did.
And then once most of that gets cut away, it's kind of like, what we talked about before, in like the feed tree episode. It kind of makes it a little bit easier if that's what you're doing. But then, as the season progresses with and then rolling into the rut, and I put my crappie rod down, then it's a whole nother animal.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would call it. You make the best of what you're given. We never
You have
said,
to have
"Hey,
that.
we're gonna go to another mansion area now, or we're gonna go do this, we're gonna do that." No, it's kind of like you take what you're given.
I've never been the feed tree guy, which, I mean, Scott, we'd rely on him to find it because he'd find it. He'd walk it and find where they're feeding, find where the deer poop is, and, that's great. I was a little different. I would kind of go just off the wall.
Yep. And off the wall is a good thing.
What do you mean by off the wall?
Just hunt places you wouldn't go hunt. Somebody
Overlooked.
I most times I can see my truck, just places like that.
Yeah. It's overlooked, and it's kind
Hunt
of
over a washing machine.
it's it's
different.
I don't, it's not like there's some method to the madness. It's just like you can kind of look at stuff. It's like, well, nobody is. It doesn't seem. You're looking at sign. I'm always looking at human sign. I'm always looking at boot prints. I'm always looking at is there a water bottle, or is there somebody's
Some evidence
cracker
of somebody.
wrapper, and
you see that, too.
and you
No matter where you go, private,
you can
public.
look and see. Well, there hadn't been nobody really messing around in here much, and then all of a sudden, lo and behold, you're like, I need to give this a sit or two,
Yeah.
and
Find a tree.
That's all of a sudden when you see that that buck that you've been looking for, and it's almost like everybody else is pushing them into something where there hadn't been other people. I don't know. It's different anywhere you go, but it's a transition from your feed. I've always been a feed guy, but
I'm very good at it, too.
in your honeysuckle. Remember, we used to have what they call the salad.
Salad bowl.
We called it the salad bowl. It was a no-brainer. You're going to see deer in there every day,
If you didn't
and nobody is hunting it.
If you didn't find
Nobody.
buck poop would fit in your hand, you wouldn't even hunt there.
I-
Like big balls.
There's literally better than any green field you could ever plant. it's right there for everybody to enjoy, and nobody's hunting it. But then
Because
I'm like,
not pretty.
we gotta go look at this, and then you stomp in there, pry your way in there, and there's just deer sign everywhere.
Are you talking like a pine thicket?
No, if you can imagine.
Just a barrage of browse.
Yeah, imagine briars and honeysuckle in an open area, and there's spattered pine trees.
Yeah.
It's like,
Maybe even a road right through it.
yeah, that was, there was a road nearby. I mean, you can see where they're crossing the road and everything, but once you get up in that, I mean, so much deer sign. I mean, they could live in there and just lay down, get up, eat, lay down, get up, eat. They don't have to go anywhere. They don't have to go anywhere at all.
I took my father to this place.
Yeah.
And I had pictures of a pretty good 8-point and another 8-point that went with him. And it was smaller. It was almost kind of like what Scott said. Had one deer that was like this size, and this next one was like a horse compared to it. Just very mature deer. And we're on this hill and watching a salad bowl, and a vehicle came by. My dad's watching 8-point. He laid down. Truck went on by. Deer stood up, started feeding again. And my dad harvested it. Well, the deer weighed 185. The other deer that was with him probably weighed 225. But he wasn't there that day. So, I mean, but the point is they get so much food from their browse in places that you would never think they're going to be. Anyway, a guy killed that deer the next year that was...
Oh, yeah, that big...
It was a split brow, 10-point. I missed him twice with a bow. He probably scored 146, maybe, something like that, a little higher.
That was a good deer.
Yep, and my father was sitting there that morning. The weekend I missed him is not a gun hunt. Next weekend was a gun hunt, and I put my father on this little open area, and I heard pow. I was like, oh, he got him. He got him. Well, another guy had got him, kind of slipped in between us, and wound up harvesting it. And I still got the guy's name, but it was a very nice deer. Perfect 10-point it's perfect 8-point with split brow tines, and the brow tines are probably 6 inches, maybe 4 or 5 inches.
You got
something
pictures of him around here somewhere.
Like that. Yeah, I got pictures everywhere, but yeah.
Well, y'all were talking about the whole idea of kind of overlooked spots, and I think so many people when they go to public, they try to drive all the way to a gate or a dead end.
They go to the very end of it.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh yes,
Gotta
that's
go
where
deep, gotta go
that's where I
deep,
get the
gotta go
farthest
deep."
way."
Yep.
They don't think about or splitting the road is way back there or whatever. Something that they're driving by constantly. Could be an awesome spot, like you're saying, not super far off the road.
Well, that's true. I mean, you can go all the way to the end and find a great spot too, but it just depends on where you're at if the deer's there. And that's the whole point.
Yeah, you don't
can't
need to
hunt-
walk past the deer to try to find the deer.
Done that most of my
Yeah.
life.
To each his own. You got to figure it out yourself.
There's no
But then
magic. bullet.
every once in a while, you got to take a different route. Try something different. A little off the wall. And that's kind of the way I hunt now. I'd rather be somewhere where it's just different. There's I'm not going to say there's not anybody doing it, but it's a spot where you think, well, no, you're not going to kill a deer here. It's like 2 years ago, I killed a buck on the 14th and the 15th. I saw that first 14th, I shot the first buck, but I had to go to work after and I clicked the safety off on him 3 times, and I'm like, I'm not going to shoot that deer. I'm not going to shoot that deer. And finally, the first time I saw him, he was about 250 yards. Yeah. And get a little different look. And then he got to about 175 yards, and I started seeing the bark in the bases of his horns. And I was like, you know what? That's a pretty decent deer. And his body, he was 200 pounds. And I shot him. So the next morning, I go back, same spot. I'm sitting there, and I think I saw 4 other bucks that morning that, they will be decent deer. And then at like 9:30, I had one come off the hill behind me, and just long tines, and it was like, just
one
like
to
we
shoot.
talked about before. It's like, okay, game on.
Long times get bucks killed.
That's right. Long tines is all I need to see.
They just need to turn their head and let
Yep.
you know, is it really worth it?
Yep. All right. So,
Trot
and I
across the
shot, killed him. Well, the buck I shot the day before that I was unimpressed with, which was mature, 200 pounds, was older than the one I killed the next day, with a better rack. You just, you never know as far as aging deer and all that. That's the thing too. And how we hunt. You're not always going to be able to say, I don't know.
You can't evaluate a deer in Alabama like
you don't
you
get
can
a
in other
chance to
places.
put your binoculars on. It's like when I killed the wizard. I
minutes.
saw him and I was like, that is a heavy horn 8-point. Get on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I knew. And then, boom, he jumped and ran about 25 yards where I couldn't see him no more. And I went down there and saw blood and then went to where he was at. And I was like, oh, my God. That's
That's
him. That's the wizard. It was one of those moments. It's just like, what a gift. What a gift. Because you don't, usually you shoot a buck and you're like, dadgum, I thought he was bigger than that, But that's one of those moments you're like, oh, boy.
That's how we ended up getting to know you, Scott.
Yeah,
we were
it was
hunting that
great.
deer.
It was great.
We're like, who's this guy that killed the buck, man? That's how we got hooked up. And there's a podcast on it. I'll have to link it and everything. I want to bring it back real quick to, they're talking about tracks, finding the track, running the roads after a rain.
Yep.
And then you mentioned buck circuits. That's interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
So explain what you mean by that. Mark, we'll start with you.
I would say if you want to talk about a buck circuit, they travel certain patterns. This is me. When they're in a bachelor group, you got 3 150 classes deer. They're going to separate. They're going to fight a little bit. They're going to push each other out. They're going to go make their own orbits. They're not going to be far away. I mean, I'm saying sometimes 500 yards to 2 miles. Just they're gonna have a little range that they do. And one day they're going to meet up and they're going to fight, or they're going to keep on going. But you might have 3 of them doing the same thing. So they're all competing for the same does, kind of. And this is that big 8-point right there. What do we hunt that thing for, a year? Year and a half, 2 years?
A year and a half. I
Anyway.
hunted him for a year and a half, and then you killed him when the first time you went in there.
I did hunt him twice that year that you started. Anyway, I watched 9 does out on this hillside, and it was the time when they're supposed to be. We were supposed to be in rut, and I watched them deer, and I'm like, if there's not a buck in there, he's really stupid. 20 seconds later, here he come off a hill right behind him. Of course, I went firing.
And it was in another one of those salad bars.
It's only
There was
I think it was
9
350
does there during the rut.
salad bar.
Duh.
Yeah. But I think it was like a 350-yard shot, something like that. And I had to shoot 5 times, and I got him twice. Unfortunately, he was a long way off, very bad angle. Most people would not took that shot, but I knew I probably can get him. And I did, but it was one of them days when I'm like, Alan, Scott, I've killed a deer. How wide is it? I said, 15 inches? I don't know. My brother's like, that ain't no big deer. I was like, man, if y'all see this deer, you're going to be very impressed. So we went and tracked it, and Scott and Alan come over there, and we tracked it down, and they were like, oh, yeah, we're impressed. He scored, I think, 155 in the 8th or 154 in the 8th, something like that.
Yeah, 154 and 3.
But that back to what we stay on our feet. We find the deer. Sometimes we hunt them hard, but you can't stay every day. Mm-hmm. If you're going to hunt a really trophy class deer, you can't go in every day. You got to go the right day.
Scott, do you have any other input kind of on the buck circuit?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And like what you've seen?
The buck circuit, it's not so much a buck circuit. It's going to be the deer circuit. They'll transition. You'll go from your acorns when they start to kind of peter out and wear down, and then they'll go. The circuit's almost going to follow a food source of their demand. They're going to transition from acorns to honeysuckle, greenbrier. Somebody's house up there is putting corn out. So there's a lot of factors there now. Now that people can bait, if there's any houses around or any outlaw that's dumping corn out, it kind of throws a kink in things. But they'll just transition into a different food source. And the bucks, once they split up, you're going to have your smaller bucks that get pushed out by the spikes and stuff they get pushed out. They're looking for a spot. That's why so many young bucks get killed, because they're just stumbling through the woods like, where do I go now? But then the bucks, once they bust up, they're going to satellite around. It's kind of always going to be about the does in a sense, when they're not just loners, and that's my thing. I struggle from early season until the rut kicks in. Well, I don't really struggle because I don't hunt that much. That's when I'm fishing. But that's when the does come back into play. And then that's when they start to just, hey, this buck comes through at 8 o'clock. This buck comes through at 9:30. This buck comes through. But that's when it's all about the does. Yeah. And if that being a circuit, but the circuit is
It's also pressure related too.
Pressure is always going to be a thing,
Yeah.
And it's subject to change, and that takes you back to figure the tracks out. Where are they at? It's like if you could just go in and get your hand on the pulse of what's going on. Okay, here is a bunch of doe tracks. All right, if it's getting close to the rut, you gotta take a sit there and see what's going on. At some point, if those does are still using that area, using that food source, using a pinch, and that's one of my bigger things now that I'm on is like gaps and pinches.
Saddles.
Saddles.
Benches.
Well, mine's hardcore pinches and hardcore gaps. If a deer's going that way, he's got to go through there. So, that simplifies and it narrows it down. It's not, well, he may be 100 yards. No, if his tracks and his sign is here, he has to come through here. There is he doesn't have an alternative. And that's the high percentage. That's what I love now is that high percentage spot. It's literally it's a gap that they have to use. And I'm talking billy goat. They'll billy goat it. They'll do stuff that you don't think or know that they will do. And that takes you back to the places where nobody's really looking. Just like you look at it, it's like,
there's no deer gonna come off that hill.
That deer ain't coming off that hill.
Oh yeah,
he will too.
If you see a zigzag trail, it's a good hill.
Oh yeah, they'll switch back it. Yes, they will.
Oh, crazy.
I've seen them. I got pictures of them. Yeah, switchback, and it's like,
I don't know if you can see that shed right there, but I found that on one of the switchback trails, the biggest one over there.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'll stand on the circuit thing for a second. When you're scouting this, again, I'll start with you, Mark.
All right.
How do you know that you're kind of on that circuit? And I know what you're going to say is like, just time in the woods, you got to walk it. But like, what kind of sign are you looking for that tells you like, hey, I'm zoning in, I'm figuring this deer out?
Yeah, it's hard to say, but tracks again, a lot of times I get on a trail, I'll rake leaves back to see if that big track is on this trail. And like Scott was saying, those pinch points, that's the first place you look. If you got some hills that they can't really go, I say can't go up, they can go up any hill, but they don't really travel it because it's not path of lethal resistance. Kind of go look at that. It's like, okay, he's going to go around this hill, off this ridge back or whatever you want to call it, and kind of rake it back and find the trails. You look for old rubs, just, I don't know how else to explain it, but you got to find where they're moving. And typically we kind of look at, just old rubs and the trails.
And so you're throughout the season, and Scott, I'm going to ask you the same thing. But Mark, throughout the season, you're locating the tracks, you're finding the sign, you're finding just the droppings and everything that tell you the deer in the area. And then it sounds like what you're saying is, as it starts to dry up a little bit, you're going to shift over, maybe hit another drainage over, 2 drainages over, maybe check the next creek bottom or whatever, and try to kind of shift with those deer, and you're constantly just trying to relocate them.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, you got.
I may have 5 different places I'm looking at one time, so I'm not on one deer unless it's like really good one and I got pictures of. Past year I had pictures of 2 good deer on one trail. They were not together, but that I know of, but they were same trail. So it's kind of like 2 pinch points come together, and I know they were killed, harvested this year, probably 500 yards from where they were pictured. So I don't know how to put it, but yeah, I just kind of go over here and look a little bit, and I'll go over here and look a little bit. I might go 20 miles down the road and go find another place.
Yeah, it goes back, and that's one thing I'm bad about is I'm beat. Sometimes I'm hunting somewhere 5 miles away from another spot, and it's just like, hey, it's like a fishing hole.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna go try this treetop,
but you can't
instead of that treetop.
Gonna make a run.
Yeah.
But you can't fish the same hole every day.
Yeah, you can't. You can't beat a spot to death and expect for every once in a while there's going to be a big deer walk through some spot that you beat to death.
And it's
but
all
you're decreasing your percentages if you're going to beat a spot to death. You really are.
And you learn that, all of us learn it as hunters. I've done it so many times.
Yeah,
because it looks great. It's beautiful, but the deer ain't there.
Oh, if it's pretty, I ain't hunting it. In both seasons now, I'm all about it. This is beautiful, But once the leaves fall, I ain't having none of that. I want it ugly. I want it as ugly as it can be.
I want somebody to drive up and go, keep on going.
Now, Scott, on the circuit question, scouting them and looking for the sign, are you similar to Mark with that, or do you do anything different?
To me, it falls back to the tracks. I'm still. Yeah. You gotta move. You gotta. That's the thing now. Is the mobile hunter. You gotta be mobile. Yeah.
We kind of refer that circuit to is these deer migrate, and it's because of what he said. The food. There's not always that food gonna be in that one area.
Yeah.
It's going to be over there the next time. It'll be over here.
A lot of the things we talk about, it adds up together. The woodsmanship, your history. Okay, they were in here last year. They were doing this last year. And then it's like, okay, it's almost like you're connecting the dots. If you could just try to use that as a tool, it's like, okay, I think they're probably transitioning to this from here. And then it's just legwork. You
got to go look.
You got to go look
at the right time.
There's times instead of I'm gonna go here and sit. Well, go to an area and walk it. Still hunt it.
Yeah.
Slip that big buck he saw 2 years ago. He slipped up on him, and he focused in on that little spot, and I'm like, well, Mark, what if that buck came from a mile away?
Yeah, he could have.
You got to dive, and that's what I always, and he realized right off the bat the things you got to capitalize on if you're given that opportunity. And I mean, I've seen the videos, bucks over 150.
You got to pay attention to
go
like dark pines, like we're saying, is your visual acuity, you got to pay attention to it because you get into an area and you see something that's in the dark.
Slow down. Binoculars. Look for movement.
Slow down.
Look for a leg.
look
for a tine.
when
he saw that buck, he's like, I saw a
something
tine
white.
move.
I just saw something white on the side of a tree and it went. And I'm like, okay, that's a buck. And he's 125 yards, got up there and I was like, you got to be kidding me. I've never done this before. But anyway.
Learning.
Learning.
We're still learning.
Every day.
We're still learning. Every time we go in the woods, we're learning.
We've already
something.
been out scouting this year, so we're still learning.
Yeah, I was out there Sunday.
So I'm glad you brought that up. What do you like to do in the summertime as far as scouting? Late summer especially. What do you
Stay
like?
away from snakes.
Snip any kind of trails, because that's another thing we used to do in the day. Just, we talk about going through the pine thickets and stuff, kind of snip through a trail to get to an area so you can slip.
You carry a tree
get the briars out of the way so you're not just hanging on your clothes and hanging on whatever tree stand, ding,
yeah.
Eliminate that stuff. And like late summer, you're just opening the door to what you think you're going to hunt.
Yeah.
And you might have to do that on God knows how many places, but you're opening the door into preseason scouting. Like I said, with me, most of the time it's always feed trees. Every year I'm going to determine, okay, what are we going to be given here? And then roll right up to, and there's times you can go out there after a storm. Last year it happened this way a couple times. We had a couple good storms in, I think it was late August, early September, and you can find acorns and stuff
blown down
out of those limbs, and it's like, okay, this is going to take some more attention. There's so many.
Plus cutting activities.
Cutting.
They do it now. And
Lord,
you're
and
gonna have some browse.
And it's funny after the pine beetles we had this year, how they're cutting different now. It's almost a savanna cut.
Plantation
where
cut.
where they have thinned. There is some. Wide open rifle hunting.
I see 200, 300 yards.
Yes.
Places. It's like crazy.
Yes. I'm telling you, they're gonna be some deer. A Roman buck this year. They're gonna be some spots where they're gonna take a beating.
But you better wear a lot of orange. You're on public land. Because you can see
I can't imagine. I was like I said, I was out there Sunday and I was looking and I was like, oh my goodness gracious, this is going to be so good. And then I also look at it, it's like, how can somebody not drive past this and go, and maybe that takes me back to where somebody is, I don't like the way that looks. To me, that's like, it's this rolling out the red carpet to some carnage.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing too about y'all's focus on tracks is you can find a track right now. Like you're not going to go find a rub right now, but you can go find those tracks right in the middle of summer.
Yeah. Oh, when it comes to rut, I don't care about buck sign. Buck sign is the last thing on my list. When it comes to the rut, I don't care because most of that sign's going to be made at night, or it's going to be made when they're down on a drain where it's wet. They'll walk down along a branch where the old stuff, I don't even know what it is, where they're rubbing. It looks real orange and red. Be destroyed all the way up a branch. And people can go sit on that till they're blue in the face.
Yeah.
They'll see a
They hit
spike
that
or a
about
doe.
2 o'clock in the morning.
I do not care.
They don't hit that till the thermals all the way down the bottom.
Yeah, they're stomping along. They're looking for does. They're in a spot where there might not be a tree. They're in a cutover.
We've been hunting this place, this area a long time, and how many times we get sucked into a bottom that's full of orange rubs? The size of your leg.
I used
But back in the days, we got pulled in all the time.
Yeah.
Man, that fires you. I remember the first time I was out here and I found one of those big. Those are hazel alders, is what they are.
Hayes orders.
Yeah, dude, I found one. I mean, it was that big around. It was the biggest rub I'd ever seen in my life at the time. And I hunted over. This was years ago. I hunted over that rub for like a month.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna kill him.
That lets you know there is a big one that has been through here.
I saw 0 deer on that.
That's all it tells you.
I had a hunt one day where I was sitting on a right of way, and creek kind of winded through, and before daylight, I got in real early on a gun hunt. I hear and all of a sudden it stopped, and I could hear twigs snapping and branches snapping. I could hear leaves shaking. I'm like, that buck's making a rub right here in front of me. He's right off the ridge. It's pitch black. I can't hear him. This is 30 minutes before daylight, and he kind of eases off. I hunt that morning, had a guy walk in on me 9 o'clock, ended up hunting a little bit longer than I ended up going down and looking at it, and that rub was destroyed. It was one of those hazel alders that were split, and he had hit one of them and was tying up the back side of it, 14 inches away. And I was like, gosh, I wish I would have seen that sucker. But yeah, it was pitch black. He was gone way before daylight.
Yeah.
We call that getting tromped.
Yeah.
We had a
Got
place.
tromped.
We had a place out here, and I think all three of us hunted it. Big old hollers come together. You could sit there, and I guess we get to stand hour before daylight. Hear that deer coming, chomp, 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 all the way off this hill, come all the way up under you. You can't see, come all the way around that ridge and go. But we call it being tromped. You could hear that deer tromping. Well, I guess a couple hundred yards away, off that hill, come down that ridge. Never saw him.
Yeah. One thing I wanted, I'm just going to change the subject, Andrew. One thing, Mark, I know that you do a whole bunch. I think Alan has done it, and I know, Scott, you've done it. It's hunted specific deer. And I want to know, at what point, Mark, starting with you, at what point did you start trying to hunt specific bucks when it came to, because I know you started switching to a lot more maturity, bigger antler.
When we got better cameras.
So I want to talk about that. Like, how did that progress, trying to hunt specific deer?
Well, me and him started. I had a Moultrie camera, one of the first originals. I had the big Y, what do you call it, frame or whatever.
I
plastic thing.
Dan Moultrie can tell you what it was.
Yeah, open the lid.
It was a 35 millimeter camera in a plastic box that went on a little aluminum frame that you strapped to the tree.
We walked out to what we called the camp spot, and went out this place, across this little area, went up. There's a ridge or a pretty steep road that went up this ridge.
It was a gap they had to use.
Gap. It's you couldn't go anywhere else but up this hill, and we found some tracks. Size your hands. So when we went up top of that hill, I was like, let's put a camera here. So we cut limbs, put a camera there, and we're looking at the way that ridge goes down. Well, we put that camera there, and that's back when you had roll film. And I think we went back, a week later, maybe?
About a week, yeah.
Yep, and probably had 6 pictures on the camera. Of course, you're going to pull it and take it to Walmart, do 1 hour or whatever. So we did that, and I'm flipping through the pictures. I'm like, 7 point. And this deer was literally turning inside out to get away from that camera, because it was one of them flash bulb cameras, like, and the next picture was, I flipped it open, and it was that deer right there a year before that horns. I mean, a year before I killed it.
In velvet.
In velvet.
He just looks like baseball bat.
I took it to a deer show, and I had a guy look at it, and I said, man, what does this thing score? Because we know nothing about scores back then. We knew their scores, but we don't know how to score them. Dude looked at it, and he's like, maybe 150. I don't know. It's hard to tell. It's in velvet. So that's pretty much our specific time we started targeting deer.
Yeah, I hunted there, like we talked about earlier. I hunted there all of that year. I saw him twice. I saw him
with horns, without, right?
I saw him once with horns and once in turkey season when they were a bachelor group right after they.
Got to tell you something.
In
whole
turkey
year of hunting, twice. Saw it twice.
Turkey season, I saw him. But I saw him in bow season.
Is he walking down?
Me and Keith were walking
with the
down.
crab apples on.
Yeah, the fish pond, and we're walking down the road. We were walking in. I was going to a spot where they literally were almost to where I was going to. There's a feed tree down there. It's in a gully. like talked about before in a feed tree, how they'll roll down that gully and kind of pool up down to the bottom. And we're going down through there, and I was like, hold on, there's a deer in the road. And then there was another deer that come out in the road and kind of bristled up. And then there was another deer that came out, and I was like, those deer are paralleling each other. It was his rack. It was like literally, it was probably 125, 130 yards. And his rack was so big that it looked like another deer walking beyond where he was. And I thought that was pretty wild.
We're hunting Alabama deer, and that's almost 22 inches wide.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
Crazy.
I didn't kill him. And the next year, that's when we got in.
Well,
Mark hurt his hip.
I hunted that deer the first day of bow season that year. We got a picture of him. Right on the hill, right where I'd put that camera. And hung a lock on. And I was set up, it was perfect, man. I was in some pines that if he's going to walk down this trail, I'm going to be like, right on him. Well, I don't know. I almost got struck by lightning that day. It rained so hard that you could not see. So I pretty much gave up on that deer for a while. I probably hunted another time later in the year, but it just wasn't the right spot.
There was a bunch of dogs that were coming through there, too. Those dogs caused a problem.
House dogs and wild dogs, whatever they were.
And then the next year, we started rolling into the rut. I think Alan had killed a couple bucks over another cutover. Mark had hurt his hip, and I was just like, Mark, just go over there and sit in a chair, Take it easy, go over there and sit in a chair. I said, me and Alan go hunt together, we're going to double up, And we go and we hunt this cutover together, and we saw a couple of small bucks. And I think it was about 9 o'clock. Before we text, it was long before iPhone or anything.
I started seeing deer at 6:30.
Yeah, and me and Alan are coming out, and he had left a message or whatever, and it was just, shot at the biggest buck I've ever seen in my life.
And I was so out of breath. It's over a mile walk.
Oh my God! So we're rushing. It was probably, let's see.
They'll come across that old bridge.
Yeah. No. We were probably 3 or 4 miles away. And we got there, and then we actually, you could talk about going down there and jumped him once he went down to look. And it was just like, oh no, But
I found blood, but
yeah.
I got up on that hill, and the first thing I found was a snake skin. And I was like, no, I don't like that. Then got up on the hill a little bit. I don't know how much y'all know about little red bushes in the woods, little red leaves.
Oh, yeah.
Little bush about that. And I thought, dang, I can't walk over there. I know that's one of them trees that looks like blood. I thought, I got to go over there. And I went over there, and it was just full of blood. So I knew I hit him. Walked up, followed the blood, went around the hill. Then he got up over a big old rock, went back around the hill I was coming up. And that's when I had to walk all the way back, up the big hill, down the big hill, all the way across that little area where I parked. Mm-hmm. And that's when I called him, like, I can't shot a deer. I couldn't breathe. I was so out of breath. And I had a hurt hip too. I mean, I pulled a tendon off my buttocks muscle, off my hip.
Bet that felt good.
That was a cool moment. That's when we really started to
Target deer.
We were trying to kill big bucks.
So what was the progression? I mean, like, cameras started playing a factor for you guys.
Cameras.
But what did you learn about the scouting method, cutting tracks like that, to associating it to a specific deer and trying to figure out where he's at? Because I know y'all have had success doing that over the years. But how did you build more confidence trying to hunt specific deer and land in a piece of ground that's so thick? Like, you don't get the opportunity to always be able to visually see them like you're seeing, in the Midwest guys hunting big ag fields or something.
Oh, yeah. Well, Think about where we hunt. Every other year it changes. Train's the same, but the timber's gone here. You can put a tree stand in an area, and 2 weeks later, go back, it's all gone. So, back to I kind of got lost in your question, but
I
visually you can see some places that you couldn't normally see, and sometimes you get to see the deer, maybe way off. One of the deer I saw this past year, I'm with my crossbow, and measured 350 yards away is one of the biggest 8 points I've seen in a long time. But
to me, it goes back to passing deer.
passing deer, yeah.
You put this picture in your mind. Once you know they're there, once you know what's possible, then it puts you in that frame of mind to where when you see this 3.5-year-old 8-point, it's really nice, but he's not that picture that's in your mind. And it just enables you to be like, you know what? Not today, Satan. We're going to let her slide.
Not today.
I mean,
But
it comes down to that. We've talked about this in one of our first, pods, me and Nick. It's just like, y'all were like, well, I shot a buck at 7:30. I was like, no, don't do that.
unless it's the right one.
You make your own. You can make and forge your own success by not shooting a deer that you're not going to be really. Remember, we went back to the moment. Mm-hmm. You need that moment, like the buck I shot. I was talking about. Come off the hill with the long tines.
Yeah,
he's a really nice buck, but he wasn't what I thought he was. There's always going to be a time when you're like, "Dadgummit, I wish I hadn't shot this deer." There's always going to be that time. But it's because you got to make a quick decision. It's Alabama. They're rutting. They're moving. They're 250 yards moving, and you got to get on them and shoot them. So there's going to be boo-boos along the way, but you're waiting for that moment. You set the bar for what you really, really want, and that's how you get to that point.
like what I'm getting out of what you're saying is, you got to let them walk.
Yeah.
Unless it's one that's like, I can't let that one walk. You got to have that wow factor.
If I really need deer meat, it's a decent 6-point. I'm sorry, buddy. Truck ride. Here we're going.
My brother said the funniest thing is after I killed that 22-inch wide 8-point, next weekend we went hunting another place that's kind of like it, really steep. Just like you can see across that holler, and it's like 250 feet down there. And I heard, I'm like, got my muzzle loader out, and I was like, I hear this deer coming. 4-point. He said, that's when I knew he was a deer hunter.
Dump the 4-point.
That's a killer. That's not a deer hunter. That's a killer.
But after that point, I've kind of relaxed a little bit, and I can't do like what Scott says is let all of them walk. I should, but I still have problems.
Hey, to each his own. Hey, if you want to stack them up, have at it, man.
I do.
But if you've got,
I'm learning.
If you've got really big bucks is on your list, unless you just get really lucky, you gotta let them walk.
Also, some spots you hunt doesn't lend itself to giving you enough time to really make a decision.
Yep.
One example, which I want to bring up, we're not going to talk too much details about, but it's the bus stop. Mm-hmm. That spot, I've sat there one time, and this is before I even met Scott. I didn't realize that's a little honey hole, okay?
Oh.
And it is a tight little spot, yep. Okay? I think, Mark, I don't know if it was you or Alan, one of y'all killed one on one of the gun hunts when me and Andrew, this is 2 years ago, we were sitting on a clear cut on the back side of some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably.
Anyway, me and Andrew were sitting on a younger clear cut, And Andrew gets down the bottom of my hair. Boom! I thought Andrew shot. Come to find out, it was 100 yards up from where Andrew.
Yeah, y'all about blew me out of the tree. I didn't know y'all were up there. And I heard a shot. I was
I've
like,
never sat there. I wish I would have.
Well, Scott sent us a photo. He's like, oh, yeah.
Is that the bus stop?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like you or Alan, one of y'all. He's like, oh.
I think it was Alan.
Yeah, it killed one of the bus stop, 8-point. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense because that gunshot was like right there. but I just going back to like, if you hunt some real tight funnels, tight little spots like that,
Yeah.
you don't get a lot of chance to get a good visual on them. And that's a big deal because like,
That's quick.
And
It's
I
so many
would-
things that are quick.
Alabama hunters, that's what we deal with.
yeah,
Too quick of a shot most of the time. But unless it was like, oh my God, yeah, I can't not pass that one up. But like you said,
Yeah, that
that
spot,
time.
the spot where I killed the wizard the day before, I saw like six rack bucks in there. It was Saturday, and I killed him on the Sunday. He was the first deer I saw on Sunday morning at like 6:55. But the day before, there was a guy. I was on a power line, and there was a guy that was like, I ranged it, and it was like 700 yards up on this hill, and he shot this deer. I actually watched the deer come out, and I was like, I want to see if there's a buck behind it. Next thing I know, boom, and I'm like, did that deer even have horns? I mean, it was that far.
Yeah.
And then I watch him come out there, and I see him doing this, you know, and then there's like 2 or 3 guys show up, and I'm like, y'all get your deer and please exit. And as I'm like, hey, y'all,
You got your orange hat
go on.
waving.
Yeah, I'm
That's why I
waving.
I carry an orange vest for that reason. You get more motion with a vest.
And I'm sitting here,
Get your
you know,
strobe light.
standing up, waving. And between us, it was about 250 for me. Giant. Bigger than the wizard. Giant buck.
Oh, wow.
Comes out, and I sit down, get on my stick, and it's just like, as I get on him, it's like his midsection and hindquarters is
Going
clearing
in.
the power line, because the power line's only about, it's one of those narrow ones. It's like 30 yards, you know. And I was just like, Jesus, you know. And I was talking to Alan that night or whatever, maybe in the next morning. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I was frustrated. I almost shot an 8-point that same morning that came up like 50 yards. I mean, it's 14, 15-inch wide, 8-point. It was like 10:45. I'm like, I'm going to shoot this deer and get out of here. And I was like, I flicked the safety off, and I was just like,
Wow.
don't do that,
Wow.
you know. And I was just like, huh? And he said, go back to the same spot. I went back to the same spot, 6:55, and the next morning, sun's coming up, beautiful, 26 degrees. I looked down there, I was like, dang, that's a heavy horn 8-point. Get on him, shoot, boom, you know.
Wizard.
Killed him, yeah. You know, so just giving,
Gotta go.
you gotta pass up those chances. Just because you want to kill deer, you know, it can rob you of killing a trophy deer.
If that's your goal, for sure.
That's
Right.
This is
And
a-
that's all I care about now, you know.
There's a lot of guys out there that are like, man, I want to kill a big deer, but they don't. I'm guilty of that too, because sometimes in the right like tall tines, he might be like, I shot one out there 2 years ago.
Yeah, just like
I
yeah.
called
I saw
him
that
into the
picture.
tree. He stepped out of the pines at 6 yards, and all I saw was tines coming straight up. I'm like, I'm shooting you.
dead.
Dropped him right in the
He's
spot with
dead,
a rifle at 6 yards.
he's
Yep.
dead.
And I got down there. I was like, oh, it was a great. He's a good deer. But I sent to Scott, and I was like, tall tines got him killed.
Yeah.
It's like second he popped out, I'm looking right on top of him. And his tines.
And that's
yeah.
that's one thing I've noticed lately is we have a lot of deer that's got the long tines. For some reason, we've not always seen that out some places we hunt. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get them killed.
Yeah.
And especially when you hunt from outer space and you see one standing down there going, it looked like it's this wide. He looked huge. And just those long tines. Dude, I'm just not used to that. And I had to.
Well, especially if you're hunting clear cut and you see those tall tines kind of coming up through that grass or something.
Oh, yeah.
Then you're like, whoa, and like you pull the trigger, you don't know what you're going to walk up on. But
Yep.
yeah,
And it's usually like, well, I thought he's bigger than that. And that's the thing I don't like is ground shrinkage, but I like it when you walk up to it and like, that thing's getting bigger.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you guys about, both of y'all have talked about kind of hunting the other hunters, and you're looking for boot tracks and you're looking for snack wrappers and dip cans and whatever you find out in the woods. In your opinion, what do you think it is that most guys are just kind of doing wrong?
I don't know. If they're out there hunting, they're not doing it wrong. I can't fault anybody for going out there and doing what they like. If you're going out there just to kill a trophy, that may be the wrong thing.
Yeah, you're going to be in for a long
I got
road.
some nice deer, but I've not always killed nice deer. I've shot a lot of younger ones, and I shouldn't have, but I'm not always after a trophy. I'm after meat, good time, just trying to have a good time hunting.
That's what it's all about anyway.
It is. It's camaraderie.
Enjoy.
Hunting together. Me and my
Just
brother.
so happens we're trying, we're trying to kill 4.5 plus deer on a management area in Alabama, and that is probably one of the most difficult things that you can take on. The way I understand it, and I don't, this is just what I understand. These deer have just been hammered by pressure. All the other guys that are out there trying to kill because they saw a picture of a big buck that was killed there last year, and they're out there hunting some ghost that's not there anymore, And that goes back to you got to have your finger on the pulse of what is going on there. You got to have that data, that information. Yes, this buck and this buck and this buck, they are here, Now, that, I guess, is what drives us now. And especially if we can kill a target buck, it's a bonus. But then sometimes you might get, just like I was just explaining, you might kill a buck that's bigger than what you got a picture of.
Yeah, that target buck you're after,
Yeah.
one come from 10 miles away is like showed up.
Yeah. So
That's why
You know,
I'm almost to the point where I don't even want to use a camera anymore and let everything be a surprise.
and that's one thing I'm proud of is before we started using cameras, I could walk into a spot, and I know this is kind of weird sounding, but I could walk into a spot and I could get a feeling. It's just like
Whether it's going to be
it's
there.
so much time in the woods. I could walk into a spot and I can get a feeling. It's like it kind of speaks to me. Mm-hmm. It's part of being a woodsman plus.
Well, you get that special feeling. You walk into a holler and go, I don't like this. Something ain't right.
Right.
Or this is it. Just you got that feeling.
Yeah, it's.
I get in those ugly places. I'm like, yeah, baby.
Yeah, I look at some ugly stuff now, and I'm like, yeah, let me get in here. And a lot of people look at it, it's like, they drive past it or they walk past it,
And that's fine. They might have that
there's
feeling too. I don't know.
In a lot of ways, there's no method to the madness because usually the young kid that's out there 12 years old, never killed a deer before, goes out and sits on a stump and kills, 160-inch deer.
Seen that
And you're
happen.
like, how does that happen? Well, that is always in the mix. It's always a possibility, So,
Well,
in a lot of ways, the more you're there, the more your chances are of that happening for you.
but I think a lot of people are missing really the big point as far as getting out and hunting.
Enjoy it.
Enjoy your friendship, your camaraderie, the
Yeah.
people you're with. It ain't about killing.
Yeah.
It's about having the time in the woods with your friends, with your family, whatever, even by yourself. But enjoy that moment.
Yeah.
And if a buck comes by you want to shoot, that's the bonus. That's
Yeah.
the bonus.
See, I'm bad about that being alone. I really, really enjoy, which we're always in contact.
Yeah.
Whenever I go and nobody else is going, it's like, hey, I'm at so and so, just in
Checking
case
in.
something going on. Even when I go put my boat in, if I go to beeswax or the 400 or something. Say, hey, I'm at the 400. Just in case something goes on, I'm by myself.
He'll text me.
It's just good knowledge. But it's like I have to have that time where it's just me in the woods and go and learn something new today. That's why I'm always learning. That's why, we keep going. It's almost like it's almost like a vitamin. My body craves it. I have to. And I know it's a lot of people don't understand, well, why do you hunt? Why do you do this? Why do you that? I am a person, it's almost like I have to. I'm driven to. It's a part of me. I've been doing it all my life. And there is more peace in those moments, whether if I don't even see a deer.
Oh yeah.
It's
Just being.
it's a part of me, Why? I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand those things. But, fortunately, we've been able to be, successful in what we do. And we hammer it out with, on public land in Alabama, hunting a deer that's really hard to kill.
We also do on public or private.
Well,
Sorry.
Well, I watch them. I like to watch. No, but
Yeah, to me, it's all about, us being in the woods together as friends, scouting, and hunting alone. But you get that time to do your thing.
the thing I've discovered this year, like with Shane,
Oh yeah.
reaching out to me, asking for advice, asking for help, young guy. And that's one thing I've always, a lot of people are like, well, secretive about this and that.
Oh yeah.
I'll go show you every tree I've ever killed a big buck out of. I'm not opposed to that. I'm not. And somebody asks me to look at this, look at that. What do you think? And I'll be like, well, if it was me, I would be right here. And then they go there and be successful.
Yeah.
That's a success in my season, because literally when it all comes down to it, that's basically what it's all about. What's a podcast about? You're learning, I'm just the guy that, some people are like, I wouldn't tell where I'm at. No, you don't understand. I'm different. I'll show you. Nick, the first time I ever took Nick out there, I took him down there and said, get in this tree. He killed a 130-inch 8-point. And he said, I think I shot the wrong one because there was a bigger one with him. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Tickles me to death because I was like, get in this tree and you'll see. And sure enough, it happens. And that, to me, that's a success to me because I called it,
I took a guy from I work that his name's Jed. Took him. He hunts the Okmulgee management area, if you know where that's at. Showed him what I do on the place I hunt. He just getting into hunting, and he said, I'm gonna start hunting public land. I can't afford private hunt club leases and stuff, and because it's too small. Brought him out there and showed him, this is what I do. The whole year we went out there, and every time we was out there it rained. Well, we got to shoot at a deer that, it was a nice deer, maybe 200 yards on the big hill, right at dark. Daylight's fading, however the horns start glowing. And he shot, then I shot. Deer turned, went down this hill, got down this road, and I just run down this little area. Looked back down this road and shot. Well, the guy he's talking about, Shane, that's 6 years ago? Scott come out there, we couldn't find blood. Couldn't find blood that night.
It was raining. Blood was out of the question.
Me and my son went the next day, and he was, 10, 11 years old. Couldn't find anything, and I'm kind of nervous because he's in the truck, and it's running, and I'm just kind of like trying to find a dead deer, around this area.
Shane found a dead head in there this year in a ditch.
He got mass on him like that. It's really good. That's why I could see it glowing right at nighttime.
But Shane's also one of those guys. He will get after it, and that's still in him. It's like, man, you're doing all the right things.
Yep.
You just got to keep pushing on, and he's going to end up being a hell of.
But I showed that guy just what I do. This is, Scott knows what I do. Alan knows what I do. This guy, is trying to learn a new place. And I was like, well, let me show you what I do. This is what I do, and he's been successful since then. So that's good. But we had a unfortunate not harvesting that deer, not recovering that deer. We did hit it, but
Yeah.
it's one of them things.
Well, gentlemen, I think we're at a point we're going to wrap up. One thing I've enjoyed about having you guys on is kind of the conversation about woodsmanship and just overall experience, because you can't teach experience and you can't teach woodsmanship. We talk about that a ton on the podcast. You can't bottle up, can't buy it. So spending time in the woods is massive for building confidence and also having that instinct gut feeling when you're in the right location based off what you're saying.
Yeah, to go without cameras, without anything, enough time out there. When and I know maybe I'm just rambling, but when you get to where you can walk into a spot and you just get this feeling, it's like, yeah, this is good, and that's the one thing that I've always kind of had, and it literally comes down to time in the woods. It's just like fishing, time on the water. There is no better thing than time in the woods and time in the water, looking for tracks, staying away from other people. I'm not going to compete with somebody to hunt a spot.
No, we pull up a place and there's a car there. It's like,
no,
plan B, C, D, or E, or F, or G.
Yeah, we got plenty of other spots to go. Y'all have at it. Good luck.
We pretty much walked about every, not say square foot, but square mile of that property.
There's been a lot of time in the woods out there, for
Well,
sure.
Guys, we appreciate you letting us come over here and do the podcast. And
Oh, yeah.
Mark, thanks for letting us come over here.
You're welcome.
All the all the viewers out there and the listeners, thank y'all for watching and listening to the podcast. We'll catch you back here on the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsman. And remember, guys, y'all stay southern.
Hey, Southern.
That's right.